Let me quickly bring in Honorable Atunwa here because there's been an additional response. I think that statement was signed by Mr. Fembi Additional. You know, there was a really big show of, oh, we're trying to work with the executive on this one by members of the National Assembly. I remember that when eventually the budget was passed to the executive, I think we had a member of the House of Representatives here who said, oh, everything we did in conjunction with members of the executive. They knew when we were going to increase the benchmark price, they were okay with it. But what we now understand is that, yes, indeed, they were okay with it. There was also some negotiations as to how that money, the increase, was going to be spent. They said, the president said, oh, a part of it was going to be used to bring down the deficit. A part of it, you know, you can have a certain part for your own projects, but you can also have another part. But he says he doesn't understand why major cuts were also made to, you know, major projects, apart from what, you know, had been agreed with members of the legislature that you could have. It seemed that enough wasn't just enough.
Firstly, let me, again, get rid of the idea that there were major cuts. There were no major cuts, and we've demonstrated that convincingly by our response. That's the first thing. Secondly, remember I told you, during the budget process, which a lot of Nigerians don't know, we don't just receive the budget and sit there and take the pen to the knife to it and cut it. We interact with the ministries, departments, and agencies. They come to us and they defend their budget. They tell us precisely what they had submitted originally to the National Planning Minister and how it's been cut, and they want to seek a reversal. I know this because I'm also chairing a committee. I'm a member of many committees. So here's the folly. The executive within themselves do not have an agreement. They're not homogeneous as you think they are, because the ministers are battling themselves to get more money for their ministries. The Minister of Budget and Planning cuts it, brings it to us. They come trying to reverse it. Now, you'll notice that ministers are not actually out on air saying anything about this budget. Why is it? Ask yourself. It's the presidency that's talking about this. Why is the Minister for Health not out about talking about it? Why is the Minister for Power and Works not talking about it? Why is the Minister for Aviation not talking about it?
If every minister that had an issue talked about it, you would have 50 people in the media having a conversation.
No, but then nothing stops them. Nothing stops them from saying, in my ministry, this was so badly damaged that I can't implement this budget. So leaving that aside, but the issue about whether or not we insert anything into the budget, I thoroughly dislike the word. Okay. Hold on, no, very important. I thoroughly dislike the word distorted. It's a budget that's brought to us. It's our working document. It's a bill, so we can't distort what is necessarily ours.
Okay. Honourable Member, let's look at the projects now.
Yeah.
You talk about the Second Niger Bridge. We talk about the Mambila, 3,000 megawatts Mambila hydropower project. Yes. Talk about Boni Bodo Road, which has been cut. The takeoff grant for Maritime University in Delta has been cut.
By how much?
That's not even. I mean, the Maritime University was 5 billion down to 3.4 billion. That's a pretty significant percentage.
Or does that mean it's unimplementable? Are you sure? Did you interact with the ministers and the people concerned to see whether or not? Hold on, whether they will spend that 3.4 billion?
I'm sorry, Honourable Member. I didn't get to finish my point. The point here is that your chief argument is essentially that, look, we have the right to inject projects to suit our constituencies' needs. Now, even if that is debatable, but even if that is taken for granted at this point, why is it that these critical national projects have been cut around the country? And you talk about counterpart funding. If you take even 100 million out of a counterpart fund, the partner, in this case Chinese Exim Bank, can say, look, you haven't brought your part, you're not getting our money.
Again, one thing I would say, and Channels TV year on year gets the Channel of the Year, Television Station of the Year award year on year. I'll ask you to indulge further and do a thorough investigative research into this process. Now, what you will find is that when we interact with those ministers, we sit down meticulously and look at details. See, when somebody brings a budget, if you're a minister today of education, you might want a budget of 1 trillion naira. Now, when we subject it to scrutiny, the most anxious scrutiny, you may find that what you actually need is 900 billion naira. But what you want is 1 trillion naira. So what you need to look at is what is the nitty-gritty of what went into that. And it's not child's play. It takes months for us to come to those things. So there's no cut that would have affected the implementability of any budget.
Well, let me ask you very directly now.
Yes.
If has the National Assembly taken a cut to some of these critical projects, particularly those with counterpart funding, in a bid to have leverage over the executive if the executive does not release money for those constituency projects?
No, because what you've assumed that the cut actually would affect the counterpart funding. If we find, for example, a 50-50 counterpart funding ratio, say a person is providing 1 billion and we're supposed to provide 1 billion, and you bring me a budget of 1.5 billion, and I look at what the counterpart funder is going to provide is 1 billion, and you're supposed to provide another 50% of it, I'll give you 1 billion. Now, you may refer to that as a cut. In reality, it's not a cut. I'm matching the grant from the private sector with what the government should provide. That's the simple fact.
How do we then reconcile the fact that your own projects were increased? I mean, I'm looking at the president's speech here. How many projects were inserted? Do you disagree with the figures that he's come up with?
I didn't agree with any figures come up with. I totally disagree.
Do you disagree with the figures? I mean,
I totally disagree with the figures it's come up with. Because we see when you keep talking
you can't disagree because the National Assembly has come out in their response and has verified that those cuts were made.
Just a moment. Let me quickly read this. Unfortunately, that has not been given much regard. I mean, he was talking about the logic, and then he says that has not been given much regard in what has been sent to me. The National Assembly made cuts amounting to 347 billion naira in the allocations to 4,700 projects. To them for consideration, and introduced 6,403 projects of their own, amounting to 578 billion naira. Is that under controversy?
There's a controversy there. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. Remember, I said the ministers will come to us.
Are you saying that just a moment,
so that you understand.
Just a moment, because I seem to get the part where you say, yeah, this projects were already in the budget, and when they come to us, of course you can cut, you can increase, as the case might be. But your own project,
exactly.
which you put in 6,403,
if you listen to me carefully,
are they yours?
If you listen to me carefully, if you subject those projects to the most anxious scrutiny. Hold on.
Which one of them?
All the 6,000, whatever you're quoting.
Are they your projects
or
that of the executive?
See, if you want to grab headlines, you can grab headlines. But listen.
No, this isn't about grabbing headlines, honourable member. If you cut, honourable member, if you cut funds that are used, wait, I'm coming. If you cut funds that are used for the security of Unity schools from 4 billion down to 100 million naira, and you inject 3 billion for funding food subsidies to those schools, that is a problem, not headlines.
That's not true. We actually increased the subvention to the Unity schools, 104 Unity schools. But let me come back to the point. What I keep saying is this. You need to have a very meticulous approach to this thing. Now, it's easy to say 6,400 projects were inserted. What I've said to you is when the ministers come, what appears to you as an insertion from us and appears to you as though it's our project, may well be, and very well is, in the vast majority of cases, the ministers themselves asking us to put those things. But I'll give you a very clear example. I chair, hold on, very important.
I'm sorry, Honourable, we really do not have time, and I really have to get Mr. Samambadi's closing remarks. Mr. Samambadi, this is going to be your closing remark. I want you to quickly intervene in this. I know you have some reactions to what he has to say, but quickly, can you tell us how you think this controversy, which we see almost every year, we've seen it since almost since 1999, up till now, how do you think it can be resolved? Should they go to court?
No, first, I've been a special advisor to the National Assembly, I've been a chief executive. First, we should stop inviting heads of parastatals to defend the budget in the sense of coming to complain about the budget. Because, like I said, some of them come, they'll put a budget, which the project that failed at the federal executive. They now use the National Assembly to smuggle them back. Secondly, when I was chief executive, some National Assembly people, some people come to you and say they are agents of legislators. Do you want project in your, do you want to put project? And I say, I don't want project. So there's also a sense of corruption, politicizing of this process. We should stop those processes. There should be coherence at the federal executive. Everybody take time to defend those projects. And once they come to the National Assembly should only interrogate the policy behind those projects. And not to allow chief executive to come and say, I want X, that is distorted. Now, should we go to court? Maybe yes, you should go to court. If you go to court, what will the court say? Court will say the National Assembly has the power to vary budgets, which is clear. But the court will not go and say the manner in which it does that. Should it introduce new projects? There should be some sense of political maturity. I think it's not good for National Assembly to introduce new projects. That means they are hamstringing the capacity, because it's second-guessing the executive. The executive has a sense of
Gentlemen,
what is
we're
implementable
totally out of time, and I have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily and intervening on this matter. Honorable Razak Atunwa is a member of the House Committee on Justice. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. And we also had Dr. Sam Amadi, who is a senior lecturer at Bayes University.